Hi guys, I want to make just a quick video here. I had a few people ask for a video on how to use the Clinic 8 scale setup gauge, or droop gauge, sorry. So this droop gauge we've had for a few years. It's pretty popular. We've sold quite a few of them. This makes setting and adjusting your droop consistently very easy. This works on buggy and truggy both. Very easy to use. If you've ever seen droop listed on a setup sheet in a single digit number, like a 0 or a +1 or a -5, that's what this system does. So in the past, people have measured the shock length and use that for their droop setting, and that's not always accurate or consistent. If you have one shock length and you change your different positions at the track, your droop's constantly changing, less or more depending on what position you're in. And you want to keep that droop consistent. That's separate from your shock adjustments, your ride height, all that sort of thing. Droop should be consistent across the board. And this gauge will allow you to measure it accurately and then set it consistently. So this is basically what comes in the droop gauge set. Comes in a nice little pouch, everything tucked in there. You come with 2 stands, 36 millimeters. You come with the gauge and a couple of stands for the gauge. I usually just use one. And then you'll want a driver for your droop screws. On my Sparco buggy, it takes a 2 mil, and I used to like to use a ball because you're not always going to have a straight shot at the droop screw. So basically, I have these assembled. So these will go under the chassis. Move that out of the way. So the chassis sits on these blocks. These are 36 millimeters tall. So on your gauge, 36 millimeters is going to be your 0. So that would mean that the center of the axle is level with the bottom of the chassis. Okay. These would be how many millimeters above the chassis. These are how many millimeters below the chassis. So a very typical setup on any buggy or truggy would be 0 front and a -5 rear. That's pretty standard. That's about your starting point on any droops. And then you can change it from there. Like some people run a +1, they'll run less droop in the front to gain more on-power steering. If the track's smooth than that, you don't need a lot of droop. So you can get the car to handle more precisely by limiting the droop. And the opposite, on a rough track, you might go more. So you might go a -1 in the front, add some droop, maybe a -6 in the rear, add rear. You're always less in the front than you are the rear, always. So I'm going to try to take this in one take. I don't want to edit a bunch of video. You have to have the shocks on. I've seen people do droop without the shocks, but that's not going to help, because if I shortened your shock an inch and you set your droop without the shocks, then you're going to have an inch less droop. So it's pretty simple. And then have your wheel nuts off, because that's where the gauge rides, is in the threads. So let me take this off the stand, and we're going to try to do this in one take. So now you can see the stands are under the chassis. So here's the front. Let's see where I've got the front here. So I've got the front right at about -3. See that, how it slides in there? So that's a lot of droop. Usually I'd run about a 0. But this is something also you're going to check every run or every few runs, you know, just like camber and ride height. This is something you're going to try. You go tumbling down the straightaway at full speed, and the droop screws, shock, everything's going to kind of flex a little bit. So this will change. But so we got -3. So let's go in here, crank down our screw a little bit, see how that moves. I'm doing this one-handed, so cut me some slack here. That's just not quite. See how it's a little tight there? Right there. Okay. That's 0 in the front. Okay. And then the rear, same thing. So you're going to adjust and track and make that adjustment consistent regardless of what shock position you're in. You're going to do droop separately. Okay, I hope that helps explain it and why we use the gauge and why we measure droop that way. We'll see you next time.